Today I'm going to be talking you through Classroomscreen. So Classroomscreen.com is a resource that I have been thrilled to pay for the last 3 years myself, and I use the pro service every single day. It's $30 a year, and it's one of the resources that I have been the most phenomenally pleased with, and so I'm going to walk you through it. You can get into Classroomscreen through myBackpack. So in order to do that, you will simply go in here, type Classroomscreen, and there it is waiting for you. When it opens up, yours is actually probably going to say something like sign in or try it out. I've already signed in as myself, so it says go to dashboard. Before I do that, I want to show you some of the things that classroomscreen.com has in terms of training resources. So you can go through under the product area and think of some different ways to use Classroomscreen. You can see they suggest that you use it to plan your class, give instruction, engage students, control the clock, and adapt to the class. They also have a whole section under resources where you can look at the widgets that are included with Classroomscreen, get to know them, get some best practices on how to use them. There's a good help center. There's also a library with ready-made screens for you. So if you click on the Our Library, you can actually get a really good idea of a few of the ways that right off the bat you can be using Classroomscreen in your class. Classroomscreen has a lot of different classroom management tools. So here they're showing you ways of lining students up, zones of regulation, classroom calendar. There's also meet the teacher activities, brain breaks, games, and different activities for different content areas like language arts or STEM. So for example, they've already prepared this one here, fridge magnet, where you can use this template to allow students to create poems or sentences using like a digital fridge with those little word magnets. This is just one of many pre-made screens that you can play with. But let's go to Dashboard. In Dashboard, you can see my actual screens. Now, I should note this is the difference between a paid account and a free account. So in a free account, you will not see any of these. You don't get to save your screens. But I've been using this for 3 years, and I definitely save my screens. Those $30 I pay every year absolutely are worth their weight in gold. So the screens that I've saved, you can see, are broken down into workspaces, a daily use section, a testing section, a miscellaneous section. You can organize them however you want, or not at all, whatever works for you. Another factor that's worth noting with your paid or free Classroomscreen account is how many name lists you can save. So with a free account, you can save up to with a free account, you can save up to 3 name lists. With a paid account, you can save hundreds of name lists. Now, most of us need at least, more than 3. So under name lists, the pro account again is worth its weight in gold. I have uploaded my rosters by block, and they're right here for me. I'll show you how I use those later. But you can see 3 wouldn't have been enough for my 5 sections. Going back to the home section, let's take a look at what my daily use looks like. I have 2 screens that I use every single morning, one for my AP section and one for my world history section. When I click on the AP section, you can see that I use Classroomscreen for a number of things every single day. I use it to put my I can statements and I will statements. I use it for dates, for IB learner profile traits, ATL skills, for different QR codes for tardy logins and tutorial logins. I have an embedded timer, a countdown clock for the AP exam, and some theme music that is playing in the background when students work. If you look at my on-level section, it's very similar, but I've included an additional piece here for the MYP inquiry question. These are the kinds of things that administrators want to be able to see when they walk into our rooms, but especially if you have multiple preps, not just 2, but 3, 4, 5. This allows you to be able to show your statements of inquiry, any of the ATL skills, IB learner profile traits, all the things that you need to be able to post on a regular basis in your classroom can be housed from here. And the nice thing is I can work on this at home and then come into work and display it on my Promethean right away. So it travels with me in a way that a whiteboard cannot. If I go back to my home section and look at testing, you can see that I've created some additional screens for my different classes when they test. I've got one set up for standardized tests, one for the PSAT, but my average students, my average tests who as students test in my class, one of the things I found is that they need vocabulary help. And these are vocabulary words that are in the unit, but are not necessarily content from the unit. Or they are those tier 3 vocabulary words, tier 2 vocabulary words that are simply more difficult for students. While I wouldn't define something like pyramids for them, something like incorporate, meaning include, is a tier 2 vocabulary word that they need help with. As students test, I have this vocabulary wall that is displayed, and anytime students ask me for a vocabulary word, I put it up on the wall. That way, all of their peers can benefit too. My AP class has timers. So they also have a vocabulary wall, but they have 2 different timers, a traditional time and those for extended time, so they can keep themselves on track. For the PSAT, you can see that I've got timer, start time, end time, and codes. This is another standardized test where I had to leave other messages up for digital testing. And this is a screen that I have prepared for classroom test corrections. In this, I make sure the instructions are very, very clear, and this is displayed on the board the entire time that students are working to keep them on track. What are some other things I use Classroomscreen for? Well, miscellaneous covers all of that. I can use Classroomscreen to welcome people to my department meeting. I can use it with multiple timers during student essay practice. Maybe we just all need to take a brain break and do some meditation. Maybe you need it for parent night. You've got to show up, put a bunch of QR codes. Maybe you need to add a list of all the different materials, class expectations, etc. Maybe you just have a sore throat and you can't talk, but you can leave a message for your students. Maybe you need to set the stage for a fun activity that you're doing. This is where we put we do the trial of Genghis Khan and his descendants, or Chinggis Khan, more accurately said. And I set the scene for us by creating a courtroom environment. I set the scene for other simulations as well using Classroomscreen. This is just one example. So what does Classroomscreen look like when you start, when you just click Create New Screen? Well, it could be any number of things. It's going to populate a blank screen like this, and then you get to choose what you put in it. If you click this little arrow right here, all of the widgets pop up. You can personalize your background. So whether you want to upload your own image, you can see that I've taken full advantage of that and have uploaded at least 23 different backgrounds of my own. Or you can use some of the backgrounds that are prepared for you, the ones that are themed by the season, best of nature, animals. As a history teacher, I love the landmarks section. There are some common neutral ones and different animations that are also really lovely, like waves lapping on the beach. I think some of you may have seen that already. Maybe you need dots, lines, graph paper. Maybe you're teaching students how to read. You need handwriting paper. Maybe you're working in a music class. You need staff annotation paper. All of these are embedded as well as some very nice basic colors. So those are your backgrounds you can choose from. And then when we go back down, these are all called widgets. And there are a lot of widgets to choose from, which you can see under the More button here. I'm actually going to start us off with a screen that I began to prepare a little bit this morning. So there are a couple of items I've already loaded here for us just to use as a demonstration piece. So the annotation feature, when you click on this little arrow here, allows you to use a marker type feature, which looks kind of like this, a highlighter, which looks like this. You can see it's a little bit more transparent, a paintbrush, which is quite thin, but does have, some variegation in it, an eraser, which just as you wipe it through each item makes them disappear. You can also do shapes, lines, arrows. So lines, arrows, only a couple different shapes are available. And of course, you can do these in any color. You also have a couple of different varieties of thickness to work with. So it's not too much, I don't think, in terms of your options here. I'm going to clear the annotations all at once using this feature. And the reason I wanted to show you annotations first is that you can use the annotations feature with anything that you put up on the board. So once you are in the annotations mode, you can draw all over any item that you have uploaded. So I'm going to stop annotating. I'm going to switch back over to the widgets, and I'm going to show you something that I prepared earlier this morning for us. I embedded an image. So when you click on Image and click on Open Settings, it allows you to upload a file from anywhere you'd like. I uploaded this image right here from my desktop earlier today. I just dragged it, dropped it, and it is here for us to play with. So the image that I chose was a map. My students are working with the Byzantine Empire today. And so I can expand this map on the screen, and I can go back to the annotation feature to do any number of things. I can use the marker here. Let's pick a color that's going to be really visible, red maybe, and I can use this to talk my students through this map, right? To draw lines, to discuss location, etc. Whenever I'm done with that activity, I can clear all the annotations and I can move back to my main widgets. I'm sure that you can imagine a million other ways to use this possibility in your classroom, but maps are a personal favorite of mine. Going back up to my widget options, I already showed you how to use the background. A poll allows you with either multiple choice, maybe smileys if you want to check in on people's emotional well-being, or a true-false question. This can be a great way to do maybe a bell ringer or an exit ticket. Obviously, we want students writing for their bell ringers and exit tickets, but it can be a really good way of checking for understanding. You have different question types and then settings. You can change the question, change the answer options, and you can decide how you want people to vote. Do you want them to vote on the screen, remotely? And also, how do you want the results to show up as a bar, pie, a donut, etc. It's also worth noting that all of the widgets allow you to change the color schemes of them in order to match your background, if that's something that you're interested in. Obviously, I've got quite a few custom themes I've done over the course of time, but you can play with that on your own time to choose a setting that works best for you. I'll just show you one example right here. And we can see that the words on the screen have changed color. Now, that said, once this is launched for students and I say, okay, this is what I want, right? I can exit out here, and I can display this for students, and students can either scan the QR code displayed on the screen, or they can go to joincrs.com and enter the code that I provided them. And they can now vote, and I'll be able to see their votes here in real time. This will tell me how many people have voted, right? And I can decide if I want to lock it and say, okay, now we're closed. If I want to, how much visibility I want people to be able to have, etc. But this way I can see, like, did all 20 of my students, all 35 of my students vote? I can see that counter right here. I can also use this for Randomizer. I know that a lot of us we have popsicle sticks, or we have different methods we use to call on students randomly. This is a real weak point of mine, and I know this, and Classroomscreen helps compensate for that particular weakness of mine. So I go to Open Settings. I've already uploaded my class lists, and you can see they're here waiting for me. So I can click on the list. I can decide if I want to enable sounds, animations. There's, I can have those or not. I can decide, which students will be chosen or not chosen. If someone's absent that day, for example, I can play with that. So all 18 students are present, great. And that's what I'm going to do. But, oh, Miguel's not here today. Okay, I'm going to check his name off, and his name will not be part of the rota. But let's say he's here today. Now I've got my list going. I can close that out, and I can click on this randomizer. And you could hear there was an animation, there was a sound. Okay, great. This is who I'm going to call on, right? Okay, now I called on her. I can call on the next student, Abraham, etc. And it's worth noting that once they're called, they won't be called again. And this helps keep me accountable for making sure that all of my students get called on at least once over the course of the class. Sound level shows you how loud it is in the classroom. We'll allow this time. So you can see how loud it is. And if you need to remind students to keep quiet, that gives a really great visual of where they need to stay. I already showed you how to embed an image. Text is the one that you're going to use the most often. Text boxes are how I was able to include all of my standards, my student objectives, things like that. You have a variety of fonts to choose from. My personal favorite is Lexend, as it was designed specifically with our students with dyslexia in mind. So I tend to use Lexend here. And you can change the size, you can bold, underline, italicize, do things to annotate if you need to. This is particularly powerful if we're annotating our objectives. You can do bullet points. You can do exponents if you need to for math. You can change the highlighting features, etc. All of these can be done to make our text more accessible to students and more meaningful. Work symbols let our students know how they can be interacting with one another over the course of the lesson. You can use a traffic light if your students need a more visual symbol for certain behaviors. A timetable, I've actually gone ahead and put up here for us. So to do a timetable, you put a title in. You decide if it's a list, a checklist, a timed schedule, and then you can add activities. As you add each activity, you can also add a pictogram. There are so many to choose from. Here you can see a class schedule that I mocked up earlier today. So you can see that I added in all these different activities, and I added in little pictograms, and this is what it looks like on the screen. So I can check this off as we go through them so the students know where we are in our lesson. We can use a timer, and boy, oh boy, do we use timers all the time. This can be to keep myself on track. This can be to keep students on track. So it's not just okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to work on this. No, I'm literally going to give you 5 minutes to work on this, right? And that little timer is going, and it keeps us all accountable, whether it's keeping me accountable for keeping a certain part of the lesson shorter or making sure that students work for the correct amount of time with a partner. I use timers every single day. The clock is often something I just have going in the background. If we look under More, there's a calendar feature. And this, by the way, can be edited to look different ways. I typically have it looking like this, so it's just, easier on students. Dice for your math classes, maybe. You can just roll the dice. What else? Under More, we also have a draw feature, which is sort of like annotation, but just in a limited space. You can embed. And actually, I'm going to take just a second on Embed because this is actually how you can embed Google Slides. So I'm actually going to hop out to my drive for just a second. I'm going to grab a recent PowerPoint. If you go to File, or rather a recent Google Slides, I should say, you go to File, then you go to, Share, Publish to Web. Now you can change these settings here, but we really want to go to Embed, and we get this code right here. Copy it and paste it. Run code. Now, my PowerPoint, or my Google Slides rather, is embedded. You can also do this with your Canva slides if you build your slides in Canva. So you can have everything, including your slides, in one place. And if you're thinking to yourself, can I annotate these? You absolutely can. So let's say I have a map right here that I want to annotate with students really early into the lesson. I can expand this out, and I can annotate right on top of my slides. A few more widgets to run you through. Group Maker. If you find yourself really bad at making miscellaneous or randomized groups, but you do want students to be consistently moving to meet with other peers, you can also use your class list for this. Choose from your classes, say how many groups you want to make, and then create the groups. Once the groups are made, you can look at them and say, ooh, I don't know if those two need to be working together, and if you need to, you can do a little rearranging. You can name the groups, change the colors, do whatever you need to do to make it suit your class and your background. You can embed QR codes. All you've got to do is paste a link in here and a QR code populate. You saw me do that already for 2 different Google Forms, my tardy form and my attendance to tutorial. You can use a stopwatch, which is a Hotly timer feature, but it counts down for us. You can also use webcam. Video. Video is, by the way, how I've embedded my music. So if you look at, for example, right here, I just paste a YouTube link and my music can play right here out of my screen. To do that, when you click on video, All you have to do is paste a link in, and the video will populate for you. Event countdown. Whether you're excited for something or dreading something, whether you got EOCs coming up or an AP exam, all you've got to do is put in the date and the countdown will populate for you. So it can also be progress if you want to do that too. When did you start? When does it end? How close are we to that goal? You could also include hyperlinks to websites or other pages, visual timers, especially for younger students if you want to be able to show a countdown like this. A scoreboard, maybe you're playing a game in your class and you've got teams. You can play with scoreboard feature. And also stickers, which are just a fun way to personalize your screen. Classroomscreen has so many different utilities, but it's the best way that I have found to keep my students engaged, to keep myself on track, to make sure that I am being a good communicator with my students, and to make sure that they know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. I hope the Classroomscreen is an incredible gift to you, your students, and your classroom, and I can't wait to see what you make with it. Have a good one. Bye.